yes, there is this context of being in a prison, and even in providing your response, what you could also say is, so although I've never worked in the prison before, or maybe you have, right? But I'm gonna just focus on say you didn't. Although I've never worked in a prison before, I've dealt with conflict resolution in the past, right? And this is what I've done. I've taken these steps in order to de-escalate. I've taken these steps in order to come to, some mutual agreement on a path forward. Like whatever those words are that you want to find in the moment, it's not so much about the environment. It is more so about what are those skills and abilities that you're bringing to the table that you are going to apply in these situations to get the results that as an organization we're looking for.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Chair Talk. Guys, great episode coming your way. We're going to talk about the correctional interview process. Now, we've covered the technical side, things we think you should know to survive the technical side of the interview, but we never really touched on the subjective side, the questions that deal with you. How best to sell yourself, especially in a world that you're still trying to figure out, So I think that this is going to be a great video. We've never covered this before from this perspective. My guest today is going to be Connie Alleyne. But first, I want to announce my three sponsors. We have American Military University. So guys, if you haven't, check out American Military University. They've been involved with me for quite some time. So again, if you're looking to seek that degree, bring some higher level education, back into the profession, that would be great. But also to bring some experience into the classroom in case you want to teach. American Military University is a great place. It's an online school. And again, they've been supportive of me since day one, but more importantly, they're supportive of the profession. We also have Guardian RFID, from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. And we also have the wrap. Now, if you aren't familiar with the wrap, I do have a link in the description here of a video that will show you exactly what the wrap is. But as we all know, controlling combative subjects quickly and in an upright position so they can breathe has never been more important. Departments such as Washington, D.C., L.A. County, San Diego County, and hundreds of other facilities across the U.S. trust and believe in the wrap restraints. Now, it's wrap, W-R-A-P. Go to saferestraints.com for contact information and mention Chair Talk to receive instructor training at no cost. Lower liability for your facility and your personnel with the wrap. Give the wrap a call today, 800-WRAP-911. Connie, the cage was not her cocoon. Hey, Connie, it's good to have you. Connie, what's your thoughts? Well, first off, how rude am I? Connie, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Connie Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm also the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall and the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. Honestly, this is probably one of the best discussions I feel like we're going to have when you think practical, like how do we practically, get ourselves in the door when we think certain positions are off limits or like we're not ready for them. Sometimes we are ready. It's just a matter of how you talk about yourself and how you show that you're ready. So excited to talk about it.
Yes, I think this is going to be a great topic because we covered the technical side, but that all because you memorize policy doesn't really mean that you're the right fit for the job. I mean, this is more of, how we need to adapt and adjust. What are we bringing to the table? More importantly, can you be trusted? Mm-hmm. And by the way, Connie, I put the label, The Cage Was Her Cocoon, is now available on Amazon, yet you still felt the need to announce it.
That's part of what I say. Get out of here.
Yeah. Hey, guys, I do have a book on the market. What the hell? Connie's announcing her stuff. There it is. And that also is going to be in the description. Link to Inmate Manipulation Decoded in description. Now, guys, this is going to be a deep dialogue, but we'll try to make it brief. But there is a little bit to cover here because, again, when you're interviewing, you have to express some level of confidence, potentially in a world you know very little about. So the first thing I like to say is that when you're at an interview and when you're being brought to the table, remember, you're doing them a favor because they need people. So sometimes I think people go in this act of desperation that I really need this job. And that adds to their lack of confidence because now they figure if I don't get this job, what's going to happen to me next? Mind you, when people put out for these jobs, that's because they need someone. So there should be some level of appreciation from the people that are putting out that request. So right off the bat, what I always do when people are coming out for a position is I thank them to let them know that, hey, by the way, we're in need of this position. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and visit us here. Because again, I think it lessens, because even me as the panel, Connie, I want the best from somebody. So right off the bat, I'm going to try to alleviate whatever stress I can. And one of the stress I know is that sometimes people are so desperate for a job that it comes out in the interview. So one of the mind shifts I try to do is let people know that it's just as much as you want the job, we need that position filled with someone capable. So ain't there a little bit of a two-way reciprocation?
Yeah, I think that's nice of you to do that. Because it does help take the edge off, right? Because people are nervous or anxious, and usually the thought process is that there's so many people who applied, right? So we don't really need them, when in fact the reality is that we do need capable people, confident people, people who one can handle themselves in any given situation that may present, and are not afraid to take ownership for their decisions and hold themselves accountable, aside from all the progressive discipline and all the other stuff that is out there. Like we need people. And right now it's also our market. Right now the market needs people. Staffing is a challenge, and so being able to present yourself as the candidate, as the right fit, really does, could make a big difference.
Right. And even though, as Connie said, we do need our people, I agree 100%. It doesn't mean the job is automatically going to be yours either. Hopefully, we still are not hiring out of desperation. We still need the best of the best. Yeah, I know. But even so, you still want to show that you're the best of the best. So having said that, the fact that you're watching this video right now goes to show me a lot about who you are, and then also the potential of where you can go. Because again, this is, learning. This is investment of your time to try to be the best that you can be. And by the way, when me and Connie started this profession, we didn't have these resources. So it's good to see that these resources are out there, and it kind of gives you a better understanding of what you're going into. Now, with that said, yes, that better understanding can kind of tell you if this profession is for me or not. But once you know that this profession is for you, then you can get an understanding of what the profession expects from you. So a little bit of a difference there, right, Connie? I mean, okay, so now I know that this profession is for me. I get that. So my next step would be, what does the profession expect from me? Now, with all the resources right now that we have, the YouTube channels, the groups on Facebook for corrections, I think that people coming in before they go to the interview process and they're making that effort to sell themselves, I don't think it's that hard for them to kind of figure out what the profession truly needs, correct? What they expect from the individuals going for these positions?
Yeah, so I think one of the major things that you can and should be doing as you go out for a position is do your research, right? And right now you have so many different platforms that you could research, whether it's just Googling corrections in the news, right? You could see the things that are trending, things that are happening, things that are relevant, right? Which also shows that you've taken that extra step to figure out like what's going on, even if this isn't an environment you're already familiar with, right? And I think the other thing is that because we have so many avenues that we could travel, like, I mean, I think that's the good news, right? The good news is that you're not walking into these situations blindly anymore. If you want information, you can actually go out and get it. Aside from all the groups that are out there, like, I mean, you've got tons of like people on YouTube who are corrections, right? And I would just caution you all, right? Tier Talk is at the top. But just be careful, right? Like, I think that there's a lot of well-intended folks that might be pushing some of their correctional experience or knowledge and such. But you just want to make sure that you find a reliable source or a reliable resource that you can cling on to and really try to learn as much as you can.
Yeah, and this I think will also give you confidence, because One of the things I remember going out for my interviews, we didn't have all these resources. So not knowing what was expected of me, I kind of had no way to understand where my questions needed to go. Now, mind you, we kind of know where the vision of corrections is headed. We know it's a partnership between safety and security and rehabilitation. Now, when I interviewed, it was kind of merging into that. It was kind of breaking away from the punitive side. But having said that, I didn't know that. So, when I'm being interviewed, my filter is something going through the safety and security and all this other stuff with totally being one-sided. I think that now, if you really want to impress on the interview, you have to understand where corrections is evolving into and try to be unique in how you present the safety, because we know that needs to happen, but also what's your role in this aspect of it all? What do you see? Because in the end, the missions that we complete daily are in line with that vision. So Connie, in my mind, the first thing I would like to say is understanding where corrections is headed gives us a great filter in how we need to navigate some of those subjective questions. And when I say subjective questions, guys, and we'll break into that a little bit, are questions that give you a chance to answer things about yourself. Leadership questions, personal questions. Why should I choose you over someone else? Questions that are only, there's really no right or wrong answer unless you know what I mean, guys, really, you know what I'm saying. I mean, obviously, there are wrong answers, but technically this is about you. You know what I mean? So it's a great way to get that understanding, because then you could filter it and give them a piece of yourself that best connects to the expectation of where we're trying to head. So Connie, what's your thoughts on that? If that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think the one thing that we want to always just bear in mind is that those subjective questions are like a golden opportunity, right? They give you the opportunity to sort of highlight your skill set. And really, it helps you to kind of say, or it allows you to show, even if you may not know everything about the environment, it's almost like, well, how do I take this skill that I possess and translate it into this environment? So hopefully you've already done your research and you've got some idea of what goes on in a prison or in a jail, right? And now here's this opportunity where you're given this very subjective question, like, why should I hire you, right? Like, say you can say, oh, I have the ability to multitask, right? And so how does multitasking translate in this environment? We know it's a chaotic environment at times. We know we have conflicting demands. We've got multiple demands. We're pulled in many directions. And so being able to handle yourself under those situations allows you to highlight that in one of those subjective questions. And that's really just one example of a way that you can show that even though you may not know everything about the environment, here's a way that you bring something to the table that could be of value to the environment.
Yeah, and it's also, I love that. And let me say value to the environment, because it kind of makes you appreciate the environment. I mean, again, when I entered in, I was so focused on my one department that I thought that was my whole world. And as I started to move up, there is a bigger world to it all. So the environment to me is a great way that kind of shows you or encompasses all the different things that connect into this. So it's great that when you're going in and you're going through the interview process, you give a hint to a bigger world, especially to the people on that panel, because I think that also shows an appreciation, because you never know who those people on that panel represent. So my other piece of advice here too is that play to your audience too. When the people introduce themselves, try to get an understanding of what that title means. And I'm sure there's got to be something that we've covered before that covers, these different perspectives. And if you can kind of understand what that title is, there's also possibly ways where you can kind of lean towards that as you answer, an appreciation for what they do that also shows a heightened perspective from you. I mean, I would love if I could get someone that's coming in on a frontline perspective, a frontline position, but they have a higher level perspective. Because to me, if that's the case, wow, how far is this person willing to go? And that also tells me all the research you've done before you even took this initial interview. I mean, the fact that a lot of people get so myopic in their ways that if I'm going out for this position, I only research this position. But then there are people that research the connections. They go off in tangents and they just seem to kind of see where their research goes. So here I am, trying to interview for this correctional position. And doing my research, and maybe at one point it talks about this, how corrections could relate to medical. Well, I want to know that. Now you start getting to understand the medical side, or how correctional officers relate to this, and I start to know that. So I think it opens up the window to that bigger world that's Connie's saying. Correct, Connie? Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't want us to gloss over, like, because you just mentioned something that I think we want to assume that's happening, right? And so, aside from researching the environment, I think really understanding the job description matters, right? Like understanding what the expectation of you based on that description is, because then you can also go into this interview kind of understanding what your role should be or what it might look like, right? Like, I mean, I think with an officer, maybe if you're going to be in a specialty unit or something like that, like I think those are questions that you could ask. And maybe when you're fresh, right, you don't know that there are specialty units, or there's, a way that you might be placed. Maybe you're in medical, right? Maybe you're in mental health, maybe you're with reentry, right? Like you might not know that up front, but I think the research and understanding that job description is really important. So I didn't want us to skip over that, because you mentioned that kind of like it was in there, like, oh yeah, you guys are going to review the job description, but like we want to make sure you actually do that, right? That way you know what you're walking into. And I think the other thing that's really important is that, as you understand the audience, right? Like when they're introducing themselves, like take a note. Like it's okay to take a note so that you know who your audience is, right? And that way, if there is someone who's there in medical, perhaps there was a situation someplace else, maybe not in the facility, where you had to engage with medical or you engage with other disciplines, and even being able to show that you're a team player or that you're a quick learner and you understand how to work with folks of from other disciplines, that in of itself is a skill that you can highlight.
Yeah, I love this, guys. And by the way, guys, even when you're doing the research, it's good to kind of note if they're asking you questions that, maybe you know the answer to, but you're, well, how would I know this? I've never worked. It's good to say, let them say, hey, before I went on this interview, these were certain things that I heard, like Connie said, I heard discussed on a channel. And, I think that this happened to me based on what I have been doing my research on. These are how I would think I would best be able to solve this concern. Now, guys, the key here, guys, is one, even when we're mentioning the research, I think that's a great thing, because that shows that someone was invested. And it kind of, I don't know, I think that gives respect when you see that someone's been invested in researching before they went out, because to me, that shows respect to me on the panel. You're not just taking this as, anybody can get this position. No, I'm going to do my research, and I'm going to, watch what I got to watch, or talk to the people I got to talk to, because I want to present the best at that point. And guys, also a big thing about this is also confidence. So confidence comes with consistency. Okay, it does. Now it's hard, because when you're going out for this interview, knowing very little about this world, actually working in this world, it's hard to find that level of confidence. I get it. But you can find confidence in the consistency of how you deliver your answers, even when you don't know something. That's a good chance to advertise how resourceful you are in finding out situations. So again, if I was asked a question that I was not familiar with, in that, because it's really rooted in the profession, I would kind of try to be resourceful in that answer, or maybe kind of bring the question into a world I'm familiar with. So sometimes they say they ask a question about two inmates arguing. Two inmates arguing, it may be no different than two people arguing on the streets. Whatever it is, you're kind of bringing what's the unknown, but you're going to kind of bring it into a world that's familiar. I'm sure it's something that you've done 100 times before, and that kind of brings confidence. It brings a level of consistency, because again, if you're consistent, you start to build the trust, and the confidence is seen. But I do believe you're going to be facing a lot of questions that are related to a world you know very little about. But believe it or not, there are probably certain things that you've done in the world you're in now, like Connie mentioned earlier, that can be applied to this. So it doesn't hurt to say this, guys. Someone can ask you something specific, because I've done this, about the profession. And it's really to understand, like a question about how two people, like, solving a conflict between two employees or two inmates. Guys, that's just a question of what you're willing to do. Are you going to de-escalate? So it is a question about you stepping up. So it could be, a more personal question. But having said that, I would openly admit, not having worked in a prison before, but working as a manager at another place or that, we've had this happen before. So I'd like to tell you how I solved it at other places, because all they're looking for is, yes, there's a de-escalation part of that, but they're looking for the initiative, the confidence to step forward. Connie, so what's your thoughts about the questions that may come up unknown that you may not know, because if you never worked in the profession? Obviously, being resourceful, you have to ask questions. If I don't know something, it's fine. Let me show you how I would figure out, or what I have been doing to try to figure something out. Or, I don't know how to make, at this point, what you would do to solve two inmates conflict, arguing, whatever it is. But I have dealt with similar situations as a manager, and these are some of the steps I've taken. And now you kind of bring in that world into yours, just to get the answer out, because they're looking for confidence. And one last thing, the reason why I'm saying that, guys, is I don't want you to get so confused on what you don't know that you decide to be hesitant in the answer. And sometimes, if you want to get past this interview process, don't let the environment change. Don't let the environment change how you think you're going to react, because most of the time you're still dealing with human behavior. If you ever dealt with human behavior before, sure, this could be escalated, but for the most part, you're dealing with human behavior. So don't let, the added part of being in a prison make you think, oh my God, well, how I was a manager at Target, well, that shit would never apply here. We don't know that. Let me hear how you solve that issue, because we don't know. So what's your thoughts on that, Connie? Is that a good way to kind of take I'm not saying, I'm sure there are differences, but the key is I want to see, you stepping up, taking some action. So what do you think about taking that world?
So it's not so much about the context, right? Like, yes, there is this context of being in a prison, and even in providing your response, what you could also say is, so although I've never worked in the prison before, or maybe you have, right? But I'm going to just focus on, say you didn't. Although I've never worked in a prison before, I've dealt with conflict resolution in the past, right? And this is what I've done. I've taken these steps in order to de-escalate. I've taken these steps in order to come to, some mutual agreement on a path forward. Like, whatever those words are that you want to find in the moment, it's not so much about the environment. It is more so about what are those skills and abilities that you're bringing to the table that you are going to apply in these situations to get the results that as an organization we're looking for, right? And so if you want to get people motivated, what have you done in the past to motivate your team? What have you done? And it's aside from, oh, we're short-staffed with this, with that. Yes, we know all of those situations exist, right? But you don't want to go in ignoring the fact that you've got these very strong skills and only highlighting the fact that here are all these reasons why we can't make it happen. That's not what we're interested in, because we know what the challenges are in the environment. What we want to know is, how are you going to move past those challenges in order to get us to that end result?
Yeah, Connie, we're speaking the same 100%, because I think a lot of people get nervous when they add the term prison or jail, when the problem is that's going to make you doubt your abilities. And then all of a sudden, what you were certain about is like, well, in a prison or jail, I'm just looking to see how you reacted. The questions we may have written may have that in the end, but if you can share a story where you took an initiative and you made an effort, and I see in that solution, this could easily be applied here. But the biggest concern is when that shift is subtle and it's made, and all of a sudden someone, they look at that environment and it heightens their concern. It's like, guys, in the end, you're not expected to know. You never worked in a prison. So I'm sure there could be some unique differences, but I'm not looking for something, specific. I'm looking to see, can you make initiative? Are you going to de-escalate? So, and the last thing I want you to do is freeze. So all of a sudden you get concerned and you freeze. So again, I see nothing wrong with, I'm not trying to compare both worlds, guys, because there are differences. I get it. But I see nothing wrong where if there's a question that you're uncertain about, because at the very end, it's a prison or jail, then I'm okay with, you know what? I've never worked in a prison or jail before. It's my first time. So I dealt with a similar situation. So if you may, I'll just tell you what I've done in my environment that I feel could be very successful here? And again, the answer has to be delivered with confidence, and it should be. It should be,
And
because
one
you've
thing
done it
about
before.
that, if you freeze, I think that's something that is actually a good lesson, right? So if you're interviewing and you came across a situation and you did freeze, right? If that was what happened, what the interviewers want to know is, so what did you do, right? What did you learn from freezing? What was the outcome from that? Because those are the lessons that we learn firsthand that could be invaluable in the environment. I froze and then this is what happened. So now in the future, I know if I were to encounter a situation like this is what I would do instead of freezing, right? So there's a way to always kind of, I don't want to say spin it, but there's a way to highlight the value that each lesson you've learned along the way could translate positively in this environment. So don't discount your experiences just because maybe at the time it was a negative outcome, because now you learned firsthand that this is not what I should do in this situation. Let me tell you what I've learned to do in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, test the characters, learn through your failures. That's the
Yeah.
best way to learn. I think it says, what's the way I had this? Hold on, give me a second. Good judgment. Oh man, I think it's good judgment comes from experience, I think it's this. Good judgment comes from valued experience, but sometimes valued experience comes from bad judgment.
Yes.
And guys, remember, it's experience that's evaluated, because obviously experience for experience really doesn't carry weight. So I love what Connie's saying, the fact that, okay, I didn't do it right this time, but this is where I've learned, so again, you're putting a little bit of a spin to it, but it also shows some level of vulnerability. Yes, but also shows personal growth,
Yeah,
because,
and ownership. Like, I did
ownership
that.
too. Oh yeah, there's so many integrity. I mean, holy shit, you got the job. Go in there and literally say every bad choice you ever made. And,
Don't do
no,
that.
I'm kidding, guys. Got carried away. I went with Connie's momentum there, and yeah, maybe you get the job the first time, but if you keep on making mistakes, I'm sure eventually it's like, well, wait a second.
They're like, well,
you know what I mean?
From none of those mistakes. What's going on?
Yeah, you learned a lot in the first one, but but guys, so I think that's great too, obviously, because you can't be afraid to express some level of failures, because again, as long as you're able to kind of say, well, I didn't stay there, I continued my moving forward, because obviously in corrections, you're going to make decisions and you're not always going to be right, but the key is again, I'm looking for, did you at least make a decision? Right. Because again, that's what we're looking for. So, kind of being frozen in time, that definitely doesn't hurt us. I mean, that definitely hurts us. So again, just having that initiative matters. I also think, if I can add some stuff, again, just kind of going back to the confidence, there's a lot of research here that has a way to connect you to the profession. So when you want to stand out, and you really want to ace that interview and be confident, I believe there's so many roads you could take in corrections that you could find something passionate about. Something that, again, we have the research now out there, that when you're at that table and you're being interviewed, it kind of gives you a little bit of validation, because you're connected to something that's higher. And then when you feel whatever it is, you could find a way for that connection to come out in what it is that's being asked of you. I mean, most of the time, again, where corrections is headed, we want people that share into that vision. So it's great to kind of see someone who has a consistent trajectory in something that relates to whatever it is that we're trying to get across with that vision. So it's, even your history, like a resume is a look in the past. I get it. So again, resume only tells you so much. It only tells you so much. So even when I put my resume out there, I always put a hint of the future. There's always something on the bottom that's going to say what you're going to get if I'm in this position, as opposed to what other people already got. I think somewhere in that resume, it has to say, okay, I've done all this and that's great, but that's a look backwards. As I go forward, I'm the best applicant for this position because blah, 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 whatever that's in the resume or the cover letter, whatever it is. It's something that expresses where you're at now. And there's even certain qualities, guys, that people automatically assume based on your resume. So there's even ways that you can try to combine the things from your past with the things that you're heading to now by just kind of seeing what are certain things that you did I mean, again, with the research here available, I'm sure there's a way to connect both worlds. Certain things that you've done in the jobs that you had in the past that had certain skills that you needed to navigate your way through that are also applicable in corrections, and make sure somewhere you're able to highlight that in the specific job functions of the resume. Like, I was a manager at Target. Well, don't just put that down. As a manager, what was your responsibility? I managed people. I delegate. I did this. Those are great qualities that we need. So again, you may not have worked in a jail, but you do know how to manage people. So again, bringing both those worlds together. And I still say resumes will look in the past, but having said that, there are going to be people that do look at that. You know, I mean, I kind of say, well, HR got that. You know, so I'm assuming the person here is already qualified. But some people do look at it to see, you know, for patterns, or, you know, what is it that I'm getting? Who is this person? So if you get a chance and someone's really looking at that resume, you should find a way to take the jobs in the past and really break it down and kind of think of what individualized functions of these jobs could apply to where you're headed next. So this way your resume is a combination of the past, the present, and hopefully the future. Connie, what's your thoughts on that? That I just thought of it just now, but I do that.
Yeah, so I think with the resume, we always, you got to just look at it as like your resume is a tool, right? Your resume is your personal marketing tool. And so when you send your resume out, you have to realize that this piece of paper is what's representing you. And so you may never get an opportunity to explain all of the stuff on the resume. So you want to be very strategic about what you put on the resume and what it looks like. One of the things that I think is really important is to be able to show growth in the resume, right? So you were able to show that progressively you may have changed positions. Doesn't matter where you might have started, you know, entry level somewhere, but your next role was an assistant manager, then the next role was a manager, and then the next role was whatever that next thing would be, right? But I think it also shows when you are able to go from one industry to another, right? And I'm not saying that you should jump all around. What I'm saying is the translation is this person isn't afraid to take the leap. This first person isn't afraid to take a risk. This person is strong enough or bright enough, smart enough to go from this to this. How did that happen, right? Like, so the resume, if crafted well, can push the interviewer to want to ask questions just because of what they've read. So as you consider what you put on the resume, and there's so many new formats out there on how you can format your resume so that you can highlight specific skills. You could, I mean, whatever way, qualifications, you don't have to do chronological anymore, where you just got the date and the position and do it that way. There's so much. But, you know, my excitement about the resume is that it is your personal marketing tool. And so as you go out and you're deciding, you know, what your next step is going to be, just think of it that way. Like, okay, so how does my resume present to this person that I am the right person for that job? So you need to highlight all of those great skills that will make you the best person for the job you're applying for. Not so much the focus on the wording on what happened in the past, right? Which is where I think, you know, Gangi is going with that. Like, yes, what you did in the past is important, but it also matters how you highlight those specific skills that are going to be of significant value in the position that you're going for.
Yeah, I actually think that by us just, I think that's actually, I'm going to put that as a key tool, because as I thinking about it and as you're expressing it, well, I think that's great, because for people to kind of take the, because that you're actually, when you're doing that, that's not about the position, that's about the experience, I think. So you have the position as a manager, right? But then what are your experiences as a manager? And it's these things. And then I could look at it and say, well, these styles, whatever, but this person has a taste of what it is that we're looking for. So I definitely do think that was a good power tip. I hope no one goes past that, because I actually, that would make me want to go back and look at the resume then, just to see where things are applied. And again, remember I said the resume is mostly look backwards, but I think as I said that, I started thinking like, well, for those that do like it, because there are people that do like it, how do I bring them forward with that resume? you know, and then they get what's in front of them, but then also the potential for, you know, where I could head. So I thought that was a very good power tip. Now, guys, also a couple other things that I think is important for this, and I don't want to skip over. We talked about vulnerabilities. Let me go back to that first because I want to express that. We all have vulnerabilities. Don't do this thing where you make your vulnerability a strength. That's the biggest BS. We've discussed this before, but we'll go briefly over it again because Connie always laughs when I say that.
Suppose that's you being your authentic self.
Right. But you know, like, so yeah. So we've discussed this in the past when we kind of did just the, you know, the technical side of things, but still good to reiterate, just in case you haven't seen the older videos. But guys, you know, hey, what's your weak spot? Oh man, I just so committed to work. You know, it's like, what? You know, how do you fix that? Not be committed. I mean, it's such a facade. And for me, at the other end of the panel, I don't buy. If you're going to give me I want a vulnerability. I tell people right off the bat, I'm unorganized. But again, you know, I'm also resourceful. So when you say a vulnerability, you could be honest with the vulnerability. You should be, but it also gives you a chance to, I said advertisement, a chance to promote your resourcefulness. Because I'll tell you something right now. As I moved up, I realized something, guys. I may only have a few skills, but I excel at some of these skills. But I'm not meant to have all these other skills. I'm meant to oversee the people that do. So having said that, doesn't make me better than them because I'm not. I just become, you know, as a supervisor, you know, my department heads, I am relying on them, of course. You know, I'm not going to sit there and tell you I'm not. You know, I'd be a fool to tell you. I mean, I custody background, you know, I got an understanding of, let's say, what the other departments do, but I'm not the experts. I mean, they're the ones that have the degrees. They're the ones that are qualified for the position. You know, that's like me. If I oversee medical, let me tell my nurses what to do. No. I oversee the generalized functions, but it's not my job to tell them what to do departmentally. So having said that, I have vulnerabilities, but I also know within those vulnerabilities, it makes me humble, but I also know where to get my strengths from. I'm not organized. It's just who I am. I'm chaotic. It's you know, it's who I am, you know? So at the end of the day is, all right, that's a vulnerability. And I'm not going to try to even do the facade where I can make that into a strength. It's not about that. You asked me what my vulnerability was. I'm unorganized. But, you know, and again, this doesn't make it into a strength, but I have good people that I'm able to lean on, or had good people that I was able to lean on. I'm very resourceful. I do find my way through, but one of the areas that I could definitely work on, because you asked me what my vulnerability was my organization skills. It's something I'm trying to grow in every day. Now, again, when I
at least you have that insight, right? And so I think that highlights that also, that you have the insight to know where you're vulnerable. And so when you have that insight, you also know what you need to complement where you have a weakness, right? Or where you have an area that you could improve on, right? So maybe I'm going to surround myself with people who are detail oriented, who are more organized, so that this ship continues to move forward. But when you don't have the insight, or when you're kind of denying that area where you could use some improvement, that's when I think you bring your vulnerability and you bring the weakness to your team. And so it matters that when they ask you what your vulnerability is, that you can actually say it, right? Because they may be thinking like, oh, but you know, this person over here is actually really great at that. So they could complement each other on this team, right? And so when you're not honest, you also take away the ability of the panel to actually align you on the right teams. So like, I think it's great that you could come out and say it, because there's no other way for us to try to make sure that you also have what you need to be successful.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that, Connie, because you can be confident in expressing your vulnerability. Yeah. I wanted to say something too, is when I was talking about before the vulnerability, I was able to obviously say in my position as I move up that I do lean on my department heads because I'm obviously in the job. So let me just also say, I'm not going to tell you to say that your goal would be is express your vulnerability if you have one, whatever it is, but then show your effort to grow. But I love what Connie said, the fact that you know it and you could be confident in expressing it, especially if you're moving forward and doing the right thing. It's great to see somebody like that, because we're not getting people that are perfect, and right off the bat, if I see someone that tries to do that, I don't buy into them, because the funny thing is even me at, having 20 years in, I'm still not perfect. So if someone's going to come in on this interview and try to express this picture of perfection, I don't buy it as being sincere. I don't, even if they are perfect, give me something, because in the end, because it's a line though, because at one point, I mean, I look at someone that could also have an ego concern, because
Right.
again, I love what Connie said, it takes tremendous insight to answer that question. And by the way, a little advice here is that don't, I'm going to give you this is not a question. Like I kind of told you that this question could happen, but don't prepare an answer for it. No, but what I'm saying, see what comes out. Surprise yourself, because we're forever growing. So a vulnerability today may not be a vulnerability tomorrow, because we're trying to always be better every day. So let's say you're watching this, but your interview is 3 years later. Maybe it's not the same vulnerability. Let the question come to you, and really take a second and think, go through your experience. What could you do better? And this way, when they explain it to you, or when they ask you the question, you can answer in an effort to say, you know what, this is my concern, but this is what I've been able to do. And then when I talk about when you're able to do things better, when you're learning, be specific. Say, I noticed I had this concern when I was working this job, and this is what happened. And, it really got to me. I went home and, and then when I came back the next day, I tried doing different things, because I knew that this wasn't the right way to be. And it's tremendous insight. Insight brings wisdom. Connie, I mean, what's your thing also about kind of being specific with that vulnerability?
So I think the more specific you are, the more it shows that you've spent time understanding that vulnerability and how it impacts your ability to be effective, right? So, one of the things that I struggle with is time management. Like, I'm pulled in many directions, doing tons of stuff. And so, because I know that, I put everything in my phone. Everything is on a schedule. Everything is on the calendar. I get an alarm and alert for everything that I have to do or that I need to be doing, because I know that about myself. If someone asks me to do something, I'm going to extend myself, and I'm not necessarily going to be focused on how long this is going to take and the time it's going to take for me to get from point A to point B, right? And so I think being able to say that with confidence also means that, okay, so I know that this has a bad impact, right? Because that means the impact your vulnerability has on your work, on your ability to, meet your commitments or obligations. And now I can even say, this is what I've done to make sure I'm better at this thing. And I think that's what people, when someone's hiring, that's what you want to see. You want to see that not only do I have the insight, but like I'm also working on it, right? I'm still a work in progress. I'm getting there. I'm not perfect, but at least here it is. This is what I'm challenged with. And you never know. You don't know what tools the job may have that could help you with whatever that issue is that you might be having.
Yeah, guys. I mean, again, it's about moving things forward. So as you shift into a new position or a new job, you got to hopefully you bring confidence with you, because again, that's the one thing that should always remain consistent. And again, there is confidence in expressing vulnerability. One more thing I'd like to cover that I think is actually one of the more important things. And again, I'm going from my experience, and I'm sure if you guys are interested, we could definitely do this all day. I think this was a great starting dialogue, something that you could definitely branch off that will definitely make you more unique on the interview. Because no one really explores this. One of the questions that you may get a lot that people just give such a simplified answer to is, I don't know, something in the line of what makes you different than every other candidate, or what makes you stand out, or other stuff like that. So basically, it's trying to make a distinction between you and the other potential hirees. So for me, I don't know who else is being interviewed, so I really can't say what makes me better than anybody else. I can't. So at that point, it's like, I need to know what makes me more unique. So a lot of people wind up expressing these intangibles that, oh, I could be trusted and I'm determined and stop. That is just, guys, listen to me on this. Stop. Everybody is saying that, unless you're able to make the intangible tangible, because Connie knows it. Because listen, like if you're going to sit there and express these determinate whatever, then you better be specifically able to lay that out specifically, because that's the only thing that's going to separate you from everybody else, because everybody's going to sit there and give those unique those same answers, cookie cutter answers, like what makes you different. Well, I'm a go-getter and I'm this and I'm that. I mean, no one's going to say anything that's negative. So you could think of any positive word about someone's ability to do the job has been said. It's been said. So unless you can specify how that word applies to you, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go back and say the same, I'm determined and I'm talented. I wouldn't do that. And we'll get to what you can do, but I've got to ask Connie. Connie, what's your thoughts when you get that answer? I mean, is it like, are we going to give me more than that? I mean, how many times are you going to get that?
I mean, honestly, it just comes off so inauthentic. It's just really difficult. Like at that point, whoever is listening has probably already tuned out, because the answer is just like everyone else's, right? And so if there's something that makes you unique, like to the job, like I think that is like I met this lady at one point. She said, that she had taken X amount of courses, and then she had done like she was one of the kids who went through like Scared Straight, right? And I was like, oh. So what that made me ask was, oh, so what made you want to work here after experiencing that, right? And so she had like an answer for that. Like that's what made her different, was that she was a kid who went through Scared Straight, and she felt that there was something that she could bring to the table to make, her work or her kind of highlight her value in that way. And I'm not saying that you got to be one of those people. That I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, when they're asking, what is it that makes you different? What is it that makes you unique from any other candidate, right? Maybe it is you've done X amount of research. Maybe you've sat on some panel. Maybe you participated in some law enforcement something. Maybe like those are the things you want to hear about, because they actually would make you different, as opposed to these cookie cutter answers that everyone's going to say like, oh, I'm dependable, I'm reliable. Okay, until you don't come in for your first shift, right? Like, like, okay, great. But I think that's what you want to dig deep and really highlight. What is it that has made you, unique, or made you the best candidate for this position? And really come up with something that is related to the position, like, or be able to relate it to the position.
Yeah, you got right where I was going. Guys, with the availability of this research that we, the way to get information, the YouTube channels, the Facebook social groups, the podcasts, stuff like that. I mean, you should be able to find something that you can utilize and express in a unique way that no one else is going to say, because they haven't done the hard work. I mean, it sucks to go through all this effort to research and really get ready, to get in this profession. When, I'm going to tell you something, guys. Anybody can memorize policy and procedure. What stands out on an interview is who you are. At least for me. Because
that's what you remember. That's what you'll remember.
Right, the uniqueness of it all. So anybody could kind of memorize, how to do this job, that job. I get it, but I'm looking for you to sell yourself. So at the end of the day, it would suck for you to do all this research and, really understand this profession. And then when asked probably one of the most important questions to set you apart from everybody else, you put yourself right in. So here you are, done all this hard work, to try to be the best you can be. And they ask that question, what makes you different? And then you go back and literally, in an effort to think you're saying shit that's different, if you go back and look at everyone else who's been interviewed, the qualities that you just said have been said 10 times over. I mean, even if you're stuck with that qualities because you haven't been able to find something else. Make the qualities that you're saying tangible then. I remember at one point when we talked about why should I be picked, I did express being determined and persistent, but I was able to connect it to the fact that I went back to school because that's what they wanted. So everybody else at the table, they said they were determined and persistent, but I just got my college degree. So I'm going to show you that. So if you're going to stick to those qualities because you feel comfortable, okay, but show me it. I don't want to hear what the word, I want you to show me. You know what you do? How about you say an action and let them see what that word is instead of you saying the word and then have them figure out what action would go with that. No, say, you know what makes me different? This is what I've done in the past, blah, 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 blah. And then the panel goes, wow, they're determined. Wow, they are persistent, as opposed to the other way where you try to present a label and then they have to think of the harder part, which is, well, what makes them any different than let your action, guys, key here too is action. Key here are the actions. Actions is what makes it believable. So, hey, Kai, before we go to close, any closing thought on, because I know you're in agreement with what I just said about letting the actions determine the definition of the word.
Yeah, I mean, I think
so. Have you been moved? No, wait, hold on. I want to brag a moment here because let me get this. Let me get this because I came up with two good shit things. I mean, two good shit. No, I came up with two. I came up with two things. I don't know why the shit wants to come out. I don't know. I came up with two things. It still wants to come out. I came up with two things that I thought was good. I think the connection, and I also think right here. So I would love to get your thoughts because I know you could take whatever I have and you could just take it over there where it's got to go. I don't know where it's got to go, but what's your thoughts on that one thing about, I mean, I just discovered that let your actions define those tangible qualities. So I'm going to sit back, put you in your cocoon.
Oh my God.
What do you got?
Well, I mean, I think, talk is cheap, right? And I think we've gotten to a point where especially when you're going through the interview process, right? The folks on the panel have seen so many resumes, they've interviewed many applicants, right? And so this is the point where it's more of the show us, not tell us, right? And you've got to be able to explicitly, it's almost like painting a picture, right? So how they would understand, right? So for someone to say they're determined, it could be like, so I'm a mother of 3. This is what I've done, blah, 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 blah. And then I graduated last year with my master's in whatever. That in of itself shows determination. It shows that the person is persistent. You don't have to necessarily say, I'm a persistent employee. I'm determined. I'm reliable. It is one, you've shown that you've got a motivation just in your story, right? Like you're a mother of 3. So I'm already thinking, okay, well, this isn't, she's not going to be jumping from job to job to job. She wants stability. She wants, this solid income for her kids, for her family, right? And then you're going to tell me a story about you went back to college at, I don't know, say you went back at 40, right? You graduated and you now have your master's. I'm like, wow, what is it in that person that would allow them to be a mother of 3 who goes back to college, graduates, and is now stepping into this world, right? Like in my mind, it's like, wow, this person has shown me not only the determination side, but also the perseverance, right? Shown me that she's got motivation. And that motivation isn't because we're going to pay her a great salary, right? That motivation could just be who she is. That motivation could be her family, whatever that motivation is. So I feel like, being able to make a connection with the story is better than you just saying those words without anything to back it up. So I support that 100%.
Right. So guys, I thought there was a lot of stuff we pioneered here because again, we don't have bullets. We kind of see where it goes. I told Connie today, let's do this. I'm going to do a show with Russ soon about combative and resistant inmates difference, but I wanted to get this out because I don't think we've ever covered it from this perspective. And I think this is a big part of the interview process that may actually supersede the technical because this right here is the potential. That's what we're showing you now. I mean, the other stuff is the now. But who do I have? So the potential is how you answer the questions that are about you, and sometimes that gets lost. Sometimes we get so focused on studying the technical that we forget that that's the smallest piece of the puzzle. Because at the end of the day, am I going to get somebody that can grow, or is this it? Oh yeah, you may know how to do a count, but that's all you got. You didn't give me anything else. So this dialogue was an effort in the interview to find some way to highlight your potential. And I believe we did that in so many ways, especially with the adapting and adjusting the resume idea. I think this last part that me and Connie just kind of talked on is very important about, showing them who you are that makes you unique. And I got one last tip. Ask a question at the end. If when the interview's done, it's always good to say, what do you expect from someone? I think to me, that's very important because now that gives respect back to them. And Connie, would that be a good question to ask? What questions do you ask at the end of the interview?
So I think the what do you expect is important. I think it also, so I've asked in the past, so how do you feel that my skills align with the job? Right. So it's almost like you are bringing this interview full circle. Right. So here's everything I said that I'm capable of. If you feel that I align, that means that I may be a good fit, because that gives me information, but it also allows me to know, like, okay, so you were paying attention during the interview, right? Like you could see me being in that role based on the skills that I presented during the interview. So it's always good to ask a question in the end.
Yep. And that, again, I do that all the time. So I think that's another. And guys, everything I'm saying, I kind of given you from both perspectives. I'm sure Connie's been on the panel a few times hiring somebody, and we've also been interviewed a few times. So we gave you a perspective of what we thought we could have done better from our evaluated experience. But we also, what do we expect if we're on the other side of the table? So Connie, anything you'd like to say in closing?
I would just like to say, I think that, your technical skills are always going to be important, but the soft skills are the ones that people need to see, right? Those are the ones that we don't really know you have them unless you talk about them, unless you highlight them, because we don't know you as a brand new candidate. We don't know you've got integrity, right? We don't know that you're honest, that you're trustworthy, you're reliable, all those wonderful words we like to put out there, right? But, being able to show it is really what's important. So if you haven't taken time to develop soft skills, now is the time to do it, because most folks that are hiring want to see those soft skills, because we work with people. We are in the people business. And if you don't have soft skills, it makes for a very difficult work environment.
Yeah, guys. And again, I can't say it better. So, guys, in the end, guys, this is just an effort to let you know that when you're going out for a job like this, you got to show that you're able to grow into it. So there's an understanding of not having all the answers, but do you have the potential to be resourceful and find those answers? So again, can you be confident in expressing a vulnerability? Can you be confident in not knowing something? Yes, because the confidence comes in your resource, in you being resourceful in how you discover the answer. And guys, I'm sure we went through the past in other jobs you had where the answer wasn't right out in front of you and you had to be resourceful in figuring it out. I mean, the location may change, but the consistency is what you're bringing to each profession. That's the key. I mean, a lot of us get worried because the profession shifts, and what happens to me if you're consistent with yourself and you're good at what you do, nothing should happen, because the capabilities and the abilities that are with you are like any other job, even in corrections, if they're good, because like Connie said, we're managing people and you know how to do that. Whether you're dealing with an irate customer or you're dealing with an irate employee or an inmate, the key is, are you going to step up? Are you going to de-escalate? I'm sure some of the skills do intertwine, or if not, it's a great starting point, because I'm sure there is some, a little bit of some different. I mean, there's a heightened level of risk, of course, so you got to add that. But having said that, what a great road to start from. You're showing us you have experience and you're willing to step up. I think if you're willing to step up, we can learn anything. Yep. If you're willing to step up. So I think that's the key. So I think this is a great dialogue. I appreciate your time, Connie. And, guys, don't forget we have 2 books on the market, Cage Was a Cocoon, Inmate Manipulation Decoded. I think we're going to re-explore this again because I have a couple other areas I think that we could jump into. And we can go back to the passion side of it all, how I think that helps, because we had a great question asked the other day that I think we could explore on. But as always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.